Mystery of Daniel's timeline revealed. Beginning in Leviticus 23, and it says, 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest, and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. Leviticus 25. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard, and gather its fruit. But in the seventh year there shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord. You shall neither sow your field, nor prune your vineyards. What grows of its own accord of your harvest you shall not reap, nor gather the grapes of your untended vine, for it is a year of rest for the land. And so when the Lord deals with people, he uses literal days because of the short time span of a human being. When the Lord deals with a nation as a whole, he deals with it in a day-year fashion, where one day equals 1 year, because a nation has even a much greater, lifespan than a human being. And so we see two examples in Leviticus 23 where it says the Sabbath for a man is set on the seventh day of the week. It's measured in days because of the short time span of man. And we see that in Leviticus 23 where it's measured in that time frame. When we go to Leviticus 25, the Sabbath for the land is set on the seventh year of a 7-year cycle known as the Shemitah. So in Leviticus 23, it puts the emphasis that when dealing with individuals, keeping the law, individuals' relationship with God, he pertains it to literal days. But when he speaks to an entire nation as a whole, he speaks of it in years because of the great lifespan of a nation. And why this is important is because in the end times, and what we read in the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel, is that there are two phases to it. There is the actual fulfillment where the time span is based on Leviticus 23, where that which is spoken in days is actual literal days. But there is another dimension to the prophetic teachings of God, to the prophetic messages that God gives in regards to the end times in the book of Daniel, and also Revelation in the book of Revelations, where he speaks of a nation in years in accordance with Leviticus 25. And what we're going to do here is looking at this time frame and having this understanding, we will see how God used this and breaking out a more bigger and grander plan in regards to Daniel's timeline, and how we can know the time frame that we are currently in regards to the end time clock. Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. The most famous Islamic site in Jerusalem is the Dome of the Rock. An impressive and beautiful edifice, the Dome of the Rock can be seen from all over Jerusalem. It is the crowning glory of the Haram es-Saraf, noble sanctuary, or Temple Mount, as they call it. The Dome of the Rock is not a mosque, but a Muslim shrine. Like the Kaaba in Mecca, it is built over a sacred stone. This stone is believed to be the place from which the Prophet Muhammad ascended into heaven during his night journey to heaven. And so, as you can see here, this is a counterfeit to when Jesus ascended to heaven, when he resurrected from the dead. So there is a counterfeit, being taking place here between the Islamic religion and, the divine faith that God has ordained. And so a shrine, the definition of a shrine is any structure or place consecrated or devoted to some saint, holy person, or deity, as an altar, chapel, church, or temple. Alright, so the Dome of the Rock is a temple. Alright, and so what is a mosque? A mosque is a Muslim temple or place of public worship. But this is just a gathering place. A mosque is a place to gather to. But the Dome of the Rock was set up as a pagan idol. It was set up as a symbol of worship. Kind of like when you have a false god, a false idol made of wood and stone before you. The Dome of the Rock is seen as an image of a specific relic, a holy divine thing. So therefore it is a pagan idol. Moving on to the history of the Dome of the Rock. The sacred rock over which the Dome of the Rock is built was considered holy before the arrival of Islam. Jews believe and still believe the rock to be the very place where Abraham prepared to sacrifice Isaac, an event which Muslims place in Mecca. In addition, the Dome of the Rock, or the adjacent Dome of the Chain, is believed by many to stand directly over the site of the Holy of Holies of both Solomon's Temple and Herod's Temple. The Dome of the Rock was built by the Umayyad Caliph Abd al-Malik from 688 to 691 AD. It was not intended to be a mosque. It was not intended to be a gathering place of worship. but a shrine for the pilgrims. In other words, an idol. All right. According to tradition, the Dome of the Rock was built to commemorate Muhammad's ascension into heaven after his night journey to Jerusalem, the counterfeit. But there seems to have been more to it than this, since the Dome of Ascension, which was created for the Prophet Muhammad's ascension to heaven, was later built nearby. So you see, there is an actual separate, purpose for the Dome of the Rock, as was mentioned, was counter to what was mentioned here, to what many Muslims believe. So the Dome of the Rock was built over the Holy of Holies. This is easy access for the Antichrist to stand in a holy place and fulfill Scripture. This place was built to house the coming son of perdition, or the Mahdi, as the Muslims call them. Satan has set up a counterfeit to Yahweh's holy temple on the Temple Mount. In Daniel chapter 9:27, it says, "The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary." So this happened in 70 AD, right? So there's a lot of history behind it, but if you go back there, you will find out that it was the Romans and all of the annexed Arab nations who volunteered to come against Jerusalem at the time, and they destroyed both the city and the temple. The temple was put down to rubbish. Now, this is important because as we read on, we'll find out something very interesting in Scripture. It says, "The end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end, and desolations have been decreed. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7." We all are familiar with the last week of Daniel, 1/7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And then it says, "And at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him." So if the temple was destroyed, right, it says that, that the people of the ruler who will come, they will destroy the city and the sanctuary, or the city and the temple of God. So if they destroy the temple of God, right, then what temple will there be for abomination of desolation to be set up? Now, of course, this could be the holy temple of God being rebuilt, as many believe, but this can also be the representation of the Dome of the Rock, which is a type of temple which was already built over the holy place of God, to where this abomination of desolation may occur. In Matthew 24 it says, "And many false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure until the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whosoever readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains." So now it's saying that when you see the abomination of desolation stand in a holy place, well, this could be the Mahdi actually setting up his throne in the Dome of the Rock. All right, there's many different interpretations of this, but this is something we must bear in mind, is that there may be a man who will someday take on this role as a Mahdi, or the son of perdition, who will set up his kingdom, his throne, within the Dome of the Rock, which is a shrine. And so, moving on, it says, by the 11th century, several legends have developed concerning the Dome of the Rock and its sacred temple, sacred stone, including the following. Now check this out, this is very important. It says, in the Middle Ages, Christians and Muslims both believe the dome to be the biblical Temple of Solomon. The Knights Templar made their headquarters there during the Crusades and later patterned their churches after its design. So during the age of the Crusades, it was the Catholic Church, which was the main denomination, Christian denomination, which fought for control of Jerusalem from the hands of the Arabic nations. Both held to the view that the dome could have been established as the holy temple of God in the past, which is obvious hearsay. But suppose there is an agenda amongst the false prophets and the son of perdition to remodel the Dome of the Rock as a third temple of God. This would indeed give a new perspective concerning the book of Revelations and the end times, as we would see an alliance of the Mahdi of Islam and the Pope of the Vatican joining power as a political and religious strength. Revelation chapter 11, verse 1 through 2, it says, And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave not, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. In the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. So the general theme, right, without going into detail, study of this, let's just keep them to the most broad interpretation of this as possible. The general theme in this scripture is that the Gentiles shall be in control of Jerusalem for roughly 1,260 years, and this happened between the Crusades and the Caliphates. Revelations 12, verse 1 through 6, it says, And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and under her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. So now the general theme, all right, without going into detail, the general theme in this scripture, especially in the last verse, verse number 6, is that the people of Israel will be dispersed throughout the world and protected for 1,260 years until the appointed time is ended for her to return. And so when we sum up the dates of the Dome of the Rock was built and the number 1260, we are given the value 1948 AD. This is the date the Jews returned to the land of Israel and ended their time in dispersion, or in the wilderness. This also marked the end of the Gentiles trampling over Jerusalem. Daniel 12. And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, an abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So from the time the abomination of desolation is set up, and so let us say that this is the Dome of the Rock, right? The abomination of desolation. It says, from the time that the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 years. Because remember, we're going with Leviticus 25 time frame and not Leviticus 23. And so when we sum up the dates the Dome of the Rock was built and the number 1,290, we are given the value 1978 AD. This is the date the Egyptian-Israeli Camp David Accords peace agreement was signed. And so when we go to the Egyptian-Israeli Camp David Accord, it says the Yom Kippur War upset the status quo in the Middle East, and the war served as a direct antecedent of the 1978 Camp David Accords. The Accords resulted in the Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty, the first ever between Israel and an Arab state. And so now we go back to Daniel chapter 9 verse 27. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. Why is this important? We'll see shortly. And so in the Camp David Accords, the beginning of the Camp David Accords, which was signed by the two parties, the Egyptian party and the Prime Minister of Israel, began on the 17th of September 1978. All right, and it lasted for 12 days. It also so happens that on that very same time frame, from the 16th of September to the 17th of September 1978, there was a total lunar eclipse. There was a blood red moon, a sign in the sky. Daniel 12 verse 12, it says, Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days. So from the time the abomination of desolation is set up, the Lord instructs his people to exercise patience for the work to be completed. Blessed will be the people of Yeshua who kept patience and maintained their hope in God for all his promises to be fulfilled on this day when the decree is finally poured out upon the son of perdition. And so when we sum up the date of the Dome of the Rock was built and the number 1335, we are given the value 2023 AD. This is the beginning of a new Shemitah cycle after the last 7 years, 2015 to 2022, ended. The year 2015 to 2022 may in fact be the last week of Daniel. And so now I'll leave it with Revelation chapter 22, and it says, "And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city."